Hey everybody, this is Steven with Fins and Scripts. I'm making one more video tonight. Like I said in my previous video about the water clarity, I did get a Bass Pro Shops gift card for Christmas. I'm very grateful to my parents for going ahead and getting that for me. So me and the fiance went to Bass Pro Shops. I bought a lot of things I wouldn't normally buy. I talked to you guys about fishing on a budget. That's why it looks like I bought a bunch of stuff. Is because I fished on a budget. I went and purchased things that necessarily weren't quite as much money as maybe a Livingston, maybe a Mega Bass, maybe a Strike King. I hit the bargain bin. I got some Bass Pro Shops lures. I hit the clearance rack. I got clearance rack lures. I even told you guys about how to buy things online and where to go and how to find them. So I even got Strike Kings cheap. And they're kind of cheap. I got them like half off though. So this last video is going to be about these 4 baits over here I have. And these are for some trophy fish that I'm going to be going after this year. One of my bucket lists is to catch a striped bass. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a largemouth bass, but it's gigantic and it's like silvery colored with these like black stripes down it. It's got a whole bunch of black stripes that go all the way down it. And those are called striped bass. And there's a lake that I fish here in Indiana. The state record was caught there. It's called Raccoon Lake or Cecil M. Hardin Lake. I think that's the technical Army Corps of Engineers name. But we call it Raccoon Lake. It's off of Highway 36. Last year, I was fishing a deep diving crankbait back in a cove. I saw some shad busting the top. They were feeding. They come in, they feed, and then about 5 minutes later, these big fish come in and start chasing the little fish around, and you can see the big fish eating them, and they'll even come out of the water and eat them. It's a lot of largemouth, it's a lot of striped bass, it's a lot of hybrid bass, which is a cross between a striped bass and a white bass. We have those in Raccoon Lake as well. So when these shad are coming in to this cove, you can watch them. They'll feed for a little while, and then they just go haywire, and you can watch these big fish eat them. So last year, I was fishing a deep diving crankbait back in this cove. I tossed it in there. It looks like a shad. I toss it into the middle of the shad, crank it down real fast like it's a shad trying to run, and I never got to see the fish. I will disclaim this. I never got to see the fish. I fought it for probably 10 plus minutes. I had a friend with me who could not believe I did not get this fish in, but he hit in the back of this cove. I hook him. He swims out to the main part of the lake in no time. It's like 30 seconds. He fought with the speed of a largemouth bass with the fight of a very big catfish. So I'm guessing it was probably a striped bass. That's what people are telling me it probably was. And it was probably one of the best fights I've ever had on a rod and reel. So 10 minutes goes by, or however long I was fighting this fish. I get it about probably 10, 15 feet from the bank. It is still very, very deep where I was fishing, so I did never get to see the fish, but my hooks popped out. Long story short, I never got to see the thing. So I talked to a guy from Ohio last year, and he told me to buy, this is quite a large lure. My fingers are about 4 inches long. This lure is probably 8 inches long. 7, 8, 9 inches long. This is a cotton cordell, and it's just basically a giant minnow or a giant shad. And what it does is it kind of darts in the water like it's trying to flee, or you can even swim it really slow across the top. And what it'll do is it'll kind of make a V wake across the top like something that's trying to flee. I'm going to grab the box real quick because I forgot exactly what this thing was called. Okay. It's cotton cordell redfin. It's basically a giant jerkbait for anybody who's fished jerkbaits. It is a giant jerkbait. And the guy in Ohio says that this is all they use to catch striped bass. So I bought one of these today. They're only $7 or $8 for this gigantic lure. So if you're wanting to go after trophy fish, I mean, even like a really giant largemouth would hit this thing. I also found this live target mouse. And I will put this I'll put this cotton cordell up next to it for size comparison. This mouse is huge. I've never seen a soft body mouse this big. the body on this thing is like 4 inches long and the tail is like 6 inches long. I bought this thing for trophy largemouth and maybe even trophy striped bass. I mean, maybe I'll get a striped bass to hit this thing somehow, but I will definitely be making a video about this thing. It looks like it has little feet down here. It's got this tail. I will definitely be trying to catch a huge largemouth on this come late spring to early fall. This is going to be so much fun. I cannot wait to use that thing. I found a wake bait. Now this is quite a bit smaller than that cotton cordell as far as length goes, but if you look at it from the bottom, it's quite a bit thicker. And it swims across the top about less than 6 inches deep. And it basically just looks like a shad. You got the shad dot, you got the shad colors, you got the shad belly. And what it does is it swims across the top of the water, kind of like this, wobbling across. And it'll make a V pattern across the back, and it rattles. So it's going to look like a bait fish trying to get away. So when those shads start schooling up, they start eating. I'll be throwing this into the middle of those shad, swimming it away quickly and making it look like something that's trying to get away. Hopefully calling in one of those striped bass or maybe a big largemouth. This might not, well, who knows? Maybe it'll be a trophy largemouth catch. Who knows? I love these wake baits. Mans makes them. Mans Baby 1 minors, or this is actually like a Mans 1 minus size, but this is a Bass Pro Shop XPS model, and I have a smaller one too. Yeah. I bought a smaller one for normal sized fish. You can tell the difference. This is like a Mans Baby 1 minus size, and this is a Mans 1 minus size. But I paid about half the price for them, fishing on a budget. Bam. And lastly, I showed you guys in the last video, this is a River to Sea Whopper Plopper. This is one of the few lures I actually paid full price for today. And this was about $16. But this is basically about a 5-inch stationary buzzbait. So if you've ever used a buzzbait, everybody knows you stop the buzzbait, it sinks under the water. It's no longer on the top. The blades are no longer turning the water, and you pretty much lose all your action. You have to fish those super fast. The only time you can use them is when those fish are going completely ballistic and eating literally everything in sight. So, a way to get around that is to get something like this Whopper Plopper. This is like a large bait fish. I mean, it kind of looks like a large bait fish. Ignore the tail. Now it looks like a large bait fish. But it makes a whole lot of racket. It basically sounds like it sounds like if you were to put a rubber blade, if you could put a rubber blade on a buzzbait, this is what it sounds like. And the coolest thing is you could push this along real fast, stop it, let the fish catch up with it, pull it, stop it, let the fish catch up with it. You can just move it along real slow, chug, 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 chug. Or you could burn it just like a buzzbait. But this thing is way more versatile than a buzzbait. I'll do a size comparison on that big giant cotton cordell thing I showed you earlier. So, still a pretty big presentation. If you're ever interested in getting one of these for normal sized fish, like a normal largemouth bass, they do also make these in like a little 3.5-inch version, and they'll do the exact same thing. And this will work too for schooling bait fish. And you can get this smaller one in a color like this, or you can get this big giant one in a color like that. It's a great thing about fishing. You have endless possibilities. It's so much fun. It's like